Touch me again, and you'll regret it. Olivia Banks's voice sliced through the smoky air of Lucky Break Billiards as she seized the cue stick. A sneering white man jabbed at her, yanking it from his grasp with fierce defiance. Welcome, listeners. Where are you tuning in from today? Atlanta, New York, or perhaps halfway across the globe? Drop a comment below and let us know. What do you think happens next in this electrifying showdown? Will Olivia back down, or will she turn the tables? Stick around to find out. If you love gripping stories of courage and triumph, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell to catch our latest videos. Share this with friends and comment your predictions. Will Olivia's skill and resolve prevail? Join us for a tale of dignity and victory that'll keep you hooked till the end. The late afternoon sun draped Atlanta in a molten gold veil, its rays glinting off the sleek black SUV as it rolled to a stop outside Lucky Break Billiards. The faded neon sign flickered weakly, a relic of a bygone era when this pool hall was the heartbeat of the city's nightlife. Now its peeling paint and cracked windows whispered neglect, but to Olivia Banks it was a diamond in the rough, a canvas for her ambition. She stepped out, her presence commanding the cracked sidewalk like a queen claiming her throne. Her form-fitting white dress, elegant yet bold, hugged her curves with a sophistication that turned heads even in the gritty downtown bustle. Her tightly coiled hair, swept into a flawless updo, gleamed under the fading light, each strand a testament to her meticulous nature. At 32, Olivia was no ordinary woman. She was the mastermind behind Banks's Break, a chain of upscale billiard halls stretching across the Southeast, and a billiards prodigy whose every shot was a symphony of precision. Her heels clicked with purpose as she approached the entrance, the sounds sharp against the distant hum of traffic. Olivia's dark eyes, sharp as a hawk's, scanned the building's facade. The location was prime, nestled in a vibrant district where foot traffic promised profit. But the interior, she suspected, would tell a different story. She adjusted the slim leather portfolio under her arm, its contents detailing her plan to acquire and transform Lucky Break into the crown jewel of her empire. This wasn't just business, it was personal. Olivia had clawed her way from obscurity, defying every stereotype hurled at a black woman in a world that often dismissed her before she could speak. Each new venue was a battle won, a middle finger to those who doubted her. The door creaked as she pushed it open, releasing a wave of stale air thick with cigarette smoke and the tang of spilled beer. The jukebox wailed a mournful country tune, its notes clashing with the erratic clatter of cue balls. Dim fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting a sickly glow on the worn green felt of half a dozen pool tables. Patrons, mostly grizzled men in faded flannel or leather, hunched over their games, their laughter rough and unfiltered. A few glanced up, their eyes lingering on Olivia with a mix of curiosity and suspicion. She was an anomaly here, a vision of elegance in a den of grit. The bartender, a lanky white man with a toothpick dangling from his lips, barely looked up from wiping a glass. A waitress, her blonde hair tied back carelessly, chewed gum and scrolled on her phone, oblivious to the newcomer. Olivia's gaze swept the room with the precision of a tactician. The tables were outdated, their felt scarred and uneven. The cues on the racks were warped, the chalk cubes crumbling. The bar's sticky counter and mismatched stools screamed neglect. Yet beneath the grime, she saw potential, a spacious layout, high ceilings, and a loyal clientele who, despite the hall's decay, filled the place on a weekday afternoon. Her mind raced, envisioning polished oak tables, sleek lighting, and a vibrant atmosphere that would draw crowds from across the city. She pulled out her phone, snapping discreet photos, her fingers moving with the efficiency of someone who'd done this before. A burly man at a nearby table, his beard flecked with gray, leaned back and muttered something to his friend, his eyes fixed on Olivia. She caught the word fancy and a snicker, but her expression remained serene, a mask of unshakable confidence. She'd faced worse, sneers, slurs, doors slammed in her face. Each had forged her into something unbreakable. She stepped toward the bar, intending to ask for the manager, when a shadow loomed to her left. A younger patron, his cap pulled low, leaned against a table, his cue stick tapping the floor rhythmically. "You sure you're in the right place, lady?" he drawled, his tone more curious than hostile. Olivia turned, her smile polite but firm. "I'm exactly where I need to be," she said, her voice smooth as velvet, yet edged with steel. "I'm here to see about Lucky Break's future." The man raised an eyebrow, clearly unconvinced, but he shrugged and returned to his game. Olivia's attention shifted back to the bar, where the bartender finally acknowledged her with a lazy nod. "Managers in the back," he grunted, jerking his thumb toward a door marked "Employees Only." She thanked him, her courtesy a deliberate contrast to his indifference, and made her way across the room. As she moved, she felt the weight of every stare, some subtle, others brazen. A group of players paused their game, their whispers trailing her like smoke. She caught fragments. "Who she thinks she is? And ain't no way she's buying this dump." The waitress glanced up, her gum chewing slowing as she exchanged a look with the bartender, a silent agreement that Olivia didn't belong. But Olivia's stride never faltered. She'd walked into rooms like this before, rooms where her skin, her gender, her very existence were questioned. Each time she'd left them changed, her name etched into their memory. She reached the door, her hand resting on the handle, when a faint unease prickled her spine. The energy in the room had shifted, a subtle tightening like the air before a storm. She glanced over her shoulder, her instincts honed from years of navigating hostile spaces. At the far end of the hall, a man in a garish Hawaiian shirt stood watching her, his posture too casual, his eyes too sharp. His cue stick rested on his shoulder, and a smirk played on his lips, promising trouble. Olivia's pulse quickened, but her expression remained calm. She knew his type, men who thrived on intimidation, who saw her as an easy target. He was wrong. She pushed open the door, stepping into a dimly lit hallway that smelled of mildew and old coffee. The manager's office was just ahead, but her mind lingered on the man in the Hawaiian shirt. Something told her he wouldn't let her presence go unchallenged. As the door swung shut behind her, muffling the jukebox wail, Olivia steeled herself. She'd come to claim Lucky Break, and no amount of hostility would deter her. This was her game, her table, her shot, and Olivia Banks never missed. The door to the manager's office clicked shut behind Olivia Banks, muffling the jukebox's drone and the low hum of Lucky Break Billiards. The hallway was a narrow, dimly lit tunnel, its walls stained with years of neglect. Olivia's heels echoed sharply, each step a declaration of purpose as she moved toward her meeting. Her leather portfolio, tucked under her arm, held the blueprint for transforming this rundown pool hall into a jewel of her Banks Break empire. But before she could reach the office, a coarse voice sliced through the air like a blade, halting her mid-stride. "Yo, lady, you lost or something." The words were laced with mockery, dripping with the kind of arrogance that thrived in places like this. Olivia turned, her dark eyes locking on to the source. A man swaggering out from the main hall, his garish Hawaiian shirt a riot of clashing colors under the flickering lights. Mitch Carver, a local hustler notorious for ruling Lucky Break's tables with an iron grip, stood before her. His bloodshot eyes raked over her white dress, lingering with a leer that made her skin crawl. The cue stick in his hand tapped the floor rhythmically, a predator's idle threat. Olivia's expression remained serene, a polished mask honed by years of facing men like him. "I'm exactly where I need to be," she said, her voice smooth but edged with steel. "I'm here to assess my future business." Her words carried the weight of authority, each syllable a challenge to his assumed dominance. Mitch barked a laugh, loud and grating, drawing every eye in the smoky hall. Heads turned from the pool tables, patrons pausing mid-shot to gawk. The lanky bartender, still clutching his rag, smirked while the gum-chewing waitress leaned over the counter, her phone forgotten. "Your business?" Mitch sneered, stepping closer, his bulk invading her space. "Sweetheart, you don't belong here. Go back to wherever you came from." The venom in his tone was unmistakable, a cocktail of prejudice and entitlement that stung like a slap. The room buzzed with tension, the air thickening as patrons whispered and chuckled, emboldened by Mitch's audacity. A wiry man in a trucker hat muttered, "She's got nerve." his tone more derisive than admiring. Olivia's pulse quickened, but her composure was ironclad. She straightened, her 5'7" frame radiating a quiet power that belied her elegant appearance. "I'm Olivia Banks, owner of Banks Break," she said, her gaze never wavering. "I'm acquiring this place and I suggest you watch your tone." Mitch's face twisted with mockery, his lips curling into a cruel grin. He twirled his cue stick with exaggerated flair, the wood whistling through the air. "Oh, you're a big shot, huh?" he drawled, his voice lowering to a menacing growl. He stepped closer, the tip of his cue jabbing forward, grazing her hip in a deliberate, invasive prod. "Maybe you're just here for the view." The room froze, the clatter of cue balls silenced, the jukebox's twang suddenly distant. Every eye was on them, the patrons' faces a mix of shock and morbid curiosity. The bartender's smirk widened and the waitress stifled a giggle, their disdain as palpable as the smoke in the air. Olivia's chest tightened, a flare of anger surging through her veins, but she refused to let it show. In one swift, fluid motion, she seized the cue's tip, her fingers closing around it like a vice. With a sharp yank, she tore it from Mitch's grasp and tossed it aside, the wood clattering against the hardwood floor like a gunshot. "Touch me again," she said, her voice low and lethal, "and you'll regret it." Her eyes bored into his, unyielding, a storm of defiance beneath her calm exterior. The crowd gasped, a few patrons shifting uncomfortably, caught off guard by her boldness. Mitch blinked, his bravado faltering for a heartbeat, his hand still hovering where the cue had been. But his ego, bloated by years of unchallenged dominance, quickly reasserted itself. "You think you're tough?" he spat, recovering his sneer. He stepped back, squaring his shoulders, his bulk dwarfing her. "Fine, let's see if you can back it up." He leaned in, his breath reeking of whiskey and malice, his voice a taunting whisper. "1 game, 9 ball. You win, I'll clear out. I win, you leave, and never come back." His eyes glinted with cruel amusement, certain she'd crumble under the pressure. Olivia's lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile. She glanced around the room, noting the skeptical stares, the barely concealed hostility from the staff. The bartender muttered something to the waitress, who laughed openly, her gums snapping like a whip. The patrons leaned forward, eager for a spectacle, their loyalty firmly with Mitch. Olivia's mind raced, calculating not just the game, but the stakes. This wasn't just about a pool table. It was about respect, about proving she belonged in a world that wanted to shut her out. "Deal," she said, her voice steady, cutting through the murmurs. "But let's make it interesting. If I win, you pay for everyone's drinks. If you lose, I cover the bar." The crowd erupted in a mix of cheers and jeers, the prospect of free booze igniting their interest. Mitch's eyes narrowed, a flicker of unease crossing his face, but he masked it with a cocky grin. "You're on, princess," he said, spitting the last word like an insult. He turned to the crowd, raising his arms like a showman. "Get ready to watch this lady crash and burn." The room roared, the patrons banging their bottles on tables, the staff joining in with mocking applause. Olivia stood motionless, her portfolio still tucked under her arm, her white dress a stark contrast to the grimy chaos around her. She knew what they saw, a black woman out of her depth, a target for their scorn. But they were wrong. She set her portfolio on a nearby stool, her movements deliberate, and stepped toward the rack of cues. The weight of their stares pressed against her, but she thrived under pressure. Her fingers brushed over the warped sticks, selecting one with a critical eye, testing its balance. Mitch strutted to the center table, racking the balls with a flourish, his every move a performance. The bartender called out, "Mitchell wiped the floor with her," and the waitress cackled, her phone now recording the scene. Olivia's heart pounded, not with fear, but with the thrill of a challenge. She'd faced men like Mitch before, men who underestimated her, who saw her skin, her gender, and assumed weakness. Each time she'd left them stunned, their egos in tatters. This was no different. She chalked her cue, her movements slow and precise, her mind already mapping the table. The confrontation had begun, and Olivia Banks was ready to play. The smoky haze of Lucky Break Billiards pulsed with anticipation, the air crackling as Olivia Banks stood poised beside the center pool table. Her white dress gleamed under the flickering fluorescence, a beacon of elegance amidst the grime. The crowd of roughneck patrons, their bottles clinking and voices buzzing, formed a ragged circle around the table, their eyes glinting with a mix of skepticism and morbid curiosity. Mitch Carver, his Hawaiian shirt a garish splash of color, strutted like a prizefighter, his cue stick slung over his shoulder. The deal was set, a high-stakes 9-ball game. If Olivia won, Mitch would cover the bar's tabs and leave. If he won, she'd pay up and vanish from Lucky Break forever. The bartender leaning over the counter smirked, his toothpick bobbing as he muttered to the gum-chewing waitress, "She's done for." The waitress, phone in hand, recorded the scene, her laughter sharp and mocking. Olivia's expression was a mask of serene confidence, but beneath it, her mind churned with strategy. 9-ball was a game of precision and nerve. Players had to sink the balls in numerical order, with the yellow striped 9 as the final prize. One misstep could end it all. She adjusted her grip on the cue, its weight familiar, an extension of her will. Mitch, basking in the crowd's approval, slammed the rack of balls into place, the clack echoing like a gunshot. "Ladies first," he taunted, his grin wide and cruel. "Or you scared already, princess?" The crowd hooted, a burly man in flannel shouting, "Show her who's boss, Mitch!" Olivia's lips curved into a faint, dangerous smile. "You break," she said, her voice calm but laced with defiance. "Let's see what you got." The challenge hung in the air, a gauntlet thrown. Mitch's eyes narrowed, a flicker of irritation crossing his face. But he leaned over the table, his bulk casting a shadow across the scarred green felt. He chalked his cue with a flourish, milking the moment, then struck the cue ball with a thunderous crack. The ball scattered, the one ball dropping into a corner pocket with a satisfying thunk. The crowd roared, bottles raised as Mitch strutted around the table, his ego inflated. "Your move, sweetheart," he sneered, leaning against the wall, certain she'd falter. Olivia stepped forward, her heels clicking deliberately on the hardwood. The room's hostility pressed against her. The bartender's snicker, the waitress's mocking gaze, the patrons' whispered bets on her failure. She ignored it all, her focus narrowing to the table. The cue ball sat near the rail, the 2-ball partially blocked by the 6. A tricky shot, but not impossible. She leaned over, her dress shimmering, and studied the angles with the precision of a mathematician. Her fingers, steady as stone, gripped the cue. She could feel the weight of every stare, the collective assumption that she, a black woman in a white dress, was out of her depth. They were about to learn otherwise. She struck the cue ball with a smooth, controlled stroke, the click sharp and clean. The ball glided across the felt, kissing the 2-ball just right, sending it spinning into a side pocket. A murmur rippled through the crowd, surprise cutting through their scorn. Olivia didn't pause. She circled the table, her movements fluid, predatory. The 3-ball was next, nestled near the 4. She aligned her shot, her body low, her eyes locked on the target. Another crisp strike, and the 3 rolled cleanly into a corner pocket. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a few patrons shifting uncomfortably. The bartender's smirk faltered, his toothpick still. Mitch, arms crossed, scoffed. "Beginner's luck," he called, but his voice lacked its earlier swagger. Olivia ignored him, her focus unyielding. The 4-ball required a bank shot, the cue ball trapped behind a cluster. She chalked her cue, the blue dust settling like war paint, and leaned in. The crowd held its breath, the jukebox's twang the only sound. Her stroke was flawless, the cue ball ricocheting off the rail to tap the 4 into a pocket with a soft thud. A few patrons clapped, their loyalty wavering, but the staff's glares intensified, their prejudice unshaken. Olivia straightened, her gaze sweeping the room, a silent challenge to their doubts. She was no stranger to these rooms where her presence was questioned, her skill dismissed. Each time she'd turned their skepticism into awe. The 5-ball loomed, an open shot but with a tight angle. She lined it up, her breath steady, and struck. The ball dropped with a clack, and the crowd's energy shifted. a mix of grudging respect and disbelief. The waitress lowered her phone, her gum chewing slowed, while the bartender muttered, "She's got some moves." Mitch's face tightened, his knuckles white around his cue. He stepped forward, trying to rattle her. "Don't get cocky," he growled. "You're still gonna choke." Olivia met his gaze, her eyes blazing with quiet fire. "Keep talking," she said softly. "It won't change the score." The crowd oohed, a few chuckling at Mitch's expense. She moved to the sixth ball, a long shot across the table. Her body was a study in control, every muscle aligned as she struck. The six sailed into a pocket and the room erupted, some cheering, others stunned into silence. The seven ball was next, a clean shot but with the cue ball close to the rail. Olivia's mind raced, calculating spin and force. She struck, the ball dropping with a thunk that felt like a heartbeat. The crowd was hers now, their earlier jeers forgotten. Even the skeptical trucker nodded, impressed. The bartender, however, leaned to the waitress, whispering, "She'll mess up soon." But Olivia was in her element, the table her battlefield, the cue her sword. Mitch's bravado was crumbling, his smirk replaced by a scowl. He paced, his Hawaiian shirt garish under the lights, his confidence eroding with each of Olivia's shots. The eight ball loomed, a daunting challenge with the cue ball hemmed in by the nine. Olivia paused, chalking her cue, her calm unshaken. The crowd leaned in, the tension thick enough to choke on. She knew this moment wasn't just about the game. It was about proving her worth in a room that wanted her gone. She leaned over the table, her white dress a symbol of defiance, and prepared to take her shot, the weight of the challenge fueling her resolve. The air in Lucky Break Billiards crackled with electric tension, the smoky haze swirling under the flickering fluorescence as Olivia Banks dominated the center pool table. Her white dress shimmered like a beacon, her every movement a study in precision and grace. The crowd of grizzled patrons, their bottles sweating in their hands, leaned forward, their earlier jeers replaced by a mix of awe and unease. Mitch Carver, his Hawaiian shirt now clinging to his sweat-dampened frame, paced like a caged animal, his bravado unraveling. Olivia had already sunk the first seven balls in their nine-ball duel, each shot a surgical strike that left the room reeling. The eight ball loomed, a black specter trapped behind the yellow-striped nine, with the cue ball pinned against a cluster of obstacles. The stakes were brutal. Olivia's victory would force Mitch to pay the bar's tabs and slink away. His win would see her humiliated, her ambitions for Lucky Break crushed. Mitch leaned against the wall, his cue stick gripped like a lifeline. "You're gonna choke," he snarled, his voice hoarse, desperation creeping into his taunt. The bartender, his toothpick still, snorted, muttering to the gum-chewing waitress, "No way she pulls this off." The waitress, her phone still recording, nodded, her smirk faltering, but her disdain intact. The crowd, however, was divided, some rooting for the upset, others clinging to their loyalty to Mitch. A burly man in a flannel shirt whispered to his friend, "She's something else," his tone grudgingly impressed. Olivia, her dark eyes locked on the table, ignored the noise. The game was her world now, the felt her canvas, the cue her brush. She circled the table, her heels clicking with deliberate rhythm, studying the eight ball's precarious position. The cue ball was hemmed in, requiring a shot that demanded not just skill, but audacity. She chalked her cue, the blue dust settling like a ritual, her fingers steady despite the weight of every stare. Her mind raced, calculating angles, spin, and force with the precision of a physicist. The eight ball was a whisper from the nine, a setup that could doom a lesser player. But Olivia Banks was no ordinary player. She'd spent years honing her craft in dive bars and upscale halls, turning skeptics into believers with every flawless shot. She leaned over the table, her body low, her white dress catching the light like a blade. The crowd held its breath, the jukebox's faint twang a distant echo. Her eyes narrowed, mapping the shot. A delicate curve around the nine, a kiss off the rail, just enough spin to nudge the eight into the side pocket. It was a gamble, a shot that could end in triumph or disaster. Mitch, sensing her hesitation, pounced. "Pressure's on, princess," he jeered, his voice cracking. "Miss this, and you're done." The crowd stirred, a few chuckling, but Olivia's focus was unbreakable, her world reduced to the table's green expanse. She exhaled softly, her breath a silent prayer, and struck. The cue ball glided with a crisp click, curving around the nine in a graceful arc. It kissed the rail, spinning just as she'd calculated, and tapped the eight ball with surgical precision. The black ball rolled, slow and deliberate, toward the side pocket. The room was a vacuum, every heart pounding as the eight teetered on the edge, then dropped with a soft thud. A collective gasp erupted, followed by scattered cheers. The trucker clapped, his friend nodding in disbelief. The bartender's toothpick fell, his jaw slack, while the waitress's phone trembled in her hand. Olivia straightened, her expression serene, but her eyes blazing with quiet triumph. The crowd's energy surged, the underdog's momentum shifting the room's tide. Mitch's face was a mask of fury, his knuckles white around his cue. "Lucky shot," he spat, but the words rang hollow, his confidence shattered. The nine ball remained, a lone sentinel near the far rail, an open shot but with a catch. The cue ball's position demanded perfect control to avoid a scratch. Olivia knew this was the moment, the shot that would seal her victory or hand Mitch a lifeline. She circled the table once more, her heels a metronome of resolve. The crowd was hers now, their earlier scorn replaced by a grudging respect. Even the skeptical patrons leaned in, captivated by the drama unfolding. The waitress whispered, "She might do it," her voice laced with reluctant awe. The bartender shook his head, refusing to believe. Olivia chalked her cue again, her movements deliberate, a ritual to center her. She leaned over, her body aligned with the table's geometry, her mind a steel trap. The nine ball was a beacon, its yellow stripes glowing under the lights. She visualized the shot, a clean, straight strike, the cue ball stopping dead to avoid the corner pocket's pull. Mitch, desperate, tried one last jab. "You'll scratch, and I'll be back in this," he growled, his voice a mix of hope and dread. Olivia didn't flinch, her focus a fortress. She struck, the cue ball rocketing across the felt with a sharp clack. It struck the nine ball dead center, sending the yellow striped ball streaking toward the corner pocket. The crowd surged forward, their shouts drowning out the jukebox as the nine ball slammed into the pocket with a decisive thunk. The cue ball halted inches from the rail, a masterclass in control. The room exploded. Cheers, whistles, bottles banging on tables. The trucker pumped his fist, shouting, "That's how you do it!" The bartender stared, dumbfounded, his rag limp in his hand. The waitress lowered her phone, her gum chewing stopped, and her smirk erased. Olivia rested her cue on the floor, her posture regal, her white dress a symbol of defiance. She turned to Mitch, her voice calm but commanding. "Pay up!" Mitch's face was a furnace, red and contorted with humiliation. He slammed his cue against the wall, the crack echoing like his broken pride. The crowd hooted, some clapping Olivia's back, others taunting Mitch as he yanked out his wallet. He threw a wad of bills onto the bar, his eyes avoiding hers, and stormed toward the exit, the room's laughter chasing him out. Olivia stood tall, her victory absolute, the table her battlefield, the nine ball her crown. The game was over, and she had claimed Lucky Break, not just the hall, but the respect of every soul in the room. The echo of the nine ball's final thunk still hung in the smoky air of Lucky Break Billiards, a triumphant note that reverberated through the crowd's roars. Olivia Banks stood beside the pool table, her white dress a radiant defiance against the grimy chaos, her cue resting lightly on the floor like a scepter. The room pulsed with raw energy, patrons banging bottles, shouting praise, their earlier skepticism shattered by her flawless victory. Mitch Carver's defeat was absolute, his garish Hawaiian shirt now a tattered flag of surrender as he stood frozen, his face a molten red, his ego in ruins. The bartender's jaw hung slack, his toothpick lost somewhere on the counter, while the gum-chewing waitress lowered her phone, her smirk erased by stunned silence. Olivia's dark eyes swept the room, calm but commanding, a queen who'd claimed her throne. "Pay up," she said, her voice a quiet blade that cut through the din. Mitch's hands trembled as he yanked his wallet from his pocket. The crowd's jeers a relentless tide. "You got lucky," he muttered, but the words were drowned by a burly trucker's shout. "Pay the lady, Mitch!" Laughter erupted, sharp and merciless, as Mitch slammed a wad of crumpled bills onto the bar, enough to cover every tab in the house. The bartender scrambled to collect the cash, his earlier disdain replaced by grudging respect. Patrons surged forward, some clapping Olivia's back, others raising their beers in salute. A wiry man in a cap grinned, saying, "Didn't see that coming." But Olivia's focus shifted, her gaze locking onto the staff, the bartender and waitress, whose hostile glares had fueled the room's prejudice. Their silence now was a confession, their complicity laid bare. She stepped away from the table, her heels clicking with purpose, and retrieved her leather portfolio from a nearby stool. The crowd parted, their cheers fading into a hushed reverence as she pulled out her phone. The room watched, captivated, as she dialed a number, her posture regal, her voice steady. "Mr. Dawson," she said, addressing the hall's owner, a gruff businessman eager to sell. "I'm offering $1 million for Lucky Break." A gasp rippled through the crowd, the figure staggering in the context of the rundown venue. She paused, her eyes flicking to the staff, who stood frozen, their unease palpable. "On one condition," she continued, her tone unwavering, "every employee here is fired. I'll hire my own team." The line was a guillotine, swift and final. Dawson's voice crackled through the phone, his agreement immediate, sensing the steel in her resolve. The bartender's face paled, his rag dropping to the counter. The waitress's gum-chewing stopped, her phone slipping from her hand. The crowd murmured, some nodding in approval, others exchanging wide-eyed glances. Olivia ended the call, her expression serene, but her eyes blazing with purpose. She'd not only won the game, but seized control of Lucky Break's future, dismantling the toxic culture that had festered within its walls. The staff's earlier smirks, their whispered slurs, their silent endorsement of Mitch's aggression, they were complicit, and Olivia would not tolerate it. Her vision for the hall was clear, a place of skill, respect, and inclusion, not a haven for prejudice. She turned to the crowd, her voice rising just enough to command attention. "This place is about to change," she said, her words carrying the weight of a manifesto. "Lucky Break will be a home for anyone who loves the game, no matter who they are." A few patrons clapped, their respect now unshakable, while others nodded, drawn to her conviction. The trucker raised his bottle, shouting, "To new beginnings!" The room echoed his toast, the energy shifting from chaos to hope. Olivia's lips curved into a faint smile, but her mind was already racing, plotting the hall's transformation, new tables, modern lighting, a staff that shared her values. Word of her victory spread like wildfire, the story of the elegant black woman who'd humbled Mitch Carver, igniting whispers beyond the hall's walls. Patrons lingered, some approaching her with questions, others offering congratulations. A young woman, her eyes wide with admiration, said, "I've never seen anyone play like that." Olivia nodded graciously, her humility as striking as her skill. But her focus remained on the staff, who now huddled near the bar, their futures uncertain. The bartender muttered something to the waitress, his voice low and bitter, but Olivia paid them no mind. Their time was over. Hers was just beginning. She slipped her phone into her portfolio, her movements deliberate, and headed toward the exit. The crowd parted, their cheers following her like a wave. As she reached the door, she paused, glancing back at the scarred pool tables, the sticky bar, the flickering neon sign. This was no longer just a business deal, it was a reckoning. She'd faced down Mitch's arrogance, the staff's prejudice, and the room's hostility, emerging not just victorious but transformative. The hall was hers now, a canvas for her vision, a testament to her refusal to be diminished. Outside, the Atlanta dusk painted the sky in hues of amber and violet, the city's pulse a distant hum. Olivia stepped onto the sidewalk, the cool air a balm against the heat of the confrontation. Her SUV waited, its sleek lines a mirror of her elegance. She slid into the driver's seat, her hands steady on the wheel, her mind alight with plans. Lucky Break would rise from its ashes, a beacon of what was possible when skill and dignity prevailed. As she pulled away, the neon sign flickered one last time, a fading relic of the past. Olivia Banks had arrived, and nothing, not Mitch, not the staff, not the weight of prejudice, would stand in her way. The dawn broke over Atlanta, its first light spilling through the grimy windows of Lucky Break Billiards, casting long shadows across the scarred pool tables. Olivia Banks stood at the center of the empty hall, her white dress swapped for a tailored blazer and jeans, her hair still neatly coiled. The air, once thick with cigarette smoke and stale beer, now carried the sharp tang of fresh paint and sawdust. The deal was done. Lucky Break was hers for $1 million, its toxic staff dismissed with a single unyielding condition. But this was no mere acquisition, it was a revolution. Olivia's victory over Mitch Carver had set the city abuzz, her name whispered in bars and coffee shops, a legend born in a single electrifying game. Now she faced a new challenge, to transform this rundown relic into a beacon of her vision, a place where skill and respect reigned supreme. Workers bustled around her, their hammers and drills a symphony of renewal. The old neon sign was gone, replaced by a sleek, backlit Banks Break logo that glowed with promise. Olivia's dark eyes surveyed the chaos with a tactician's precision, her leather portfolio now a command center of blueprints and contracts. The hall's bones were solid, high ceilings, a spacious layout, but its soul had been rotting. She'd gutted it, ordering the warped tables hauled out, the sticky bar demolished, the flickering fluorescents ripped from their sockets. In their place, sleek oak tables with pristine green felt were wheeled in, their surfaces gleaming under new, warm pendant lights. The walls, once stained and peeling, were coated in a crisp, modern gray, accented with bold murals of billiard balls in mid-flight, a nod to the game's artistry. Olivia moved through the space, her boots echoing on the polished hardwood floor, directing workers with a calm authority. "That bar goes there," she said, pointing to a corner where a mahogany counter was taking shape, its surface destined for craft cocktails, not cheap whiskey. A young carpenter nodded, adjusting his plans, while a painter balanced on a ladder, adding flourishes to a mural of a cue ball shattering into stars. Every detail bore Olivia's mark, her insistence on quality, her refusal to compromise. She'd seen too many places like Lucky Break fester under neglect, their potential squandered by apathy. Not here, not under her watch. Her phone buzzed, a message from her assistant, Keisha, confirming the arrival of new staff. Olivia had been meticulous in her hiring, scouring resumes for skill, passion, and integrity. She wanted a team as diverse as the city itself, men and women, young and seasoned, black, white, Latino, Asian, united by a love for the game and a commitment to respect. She'd interviewed each candidate herself, probing not just their experience, but their values. One, a former pro player named Jamal, had impressed her with his quiet intensity. Another, a bartender named Maria, radiated warmth and quick wit. They were arriving today, ready to breathe life into her vision. As the workers cleared debris, Olivia paused by a new feature, a glass-walled lounge for private games, its plush chairs and low tables, a far cry from the hall's former squalor. She envisioned families here, young players learning the game, women competing without fear of leers. Her mind flashed to her own childhood, sneaking into her uncle's pool hall, a black girl in a world that didn't welcome her. She'd learned to play under his watchful eye, her small hands mastering the cue, her heart soaking up his lessons. The table don't care who you are, it only cares how you play. Those words had carried her through every barrier, and now she'd build a place where others could find that same refuge. The front door swung open, and Keisha strode in, leading a dozen new hires. Their faces were a mix of excitement and nerves, their eyes wide as they took in the transforming space. Olivia greeted them with a warm smile, her presence instantly commanding. "Welcome to Banks Break," she said, her voice resonant, carrying the weight of her journey. "This isn't just a job, it's a mission. We're building a place where everyone belongs, where the game is king and respect is non-negotiable." The group nodded, some exchanging glances, others standing taller, inspired by her conviction. Jamal stepped forward, his cue case slung over his shoulder. "Heard about your game with Mitch," he said, a grin breaking through. "You're the real deal." Olivia's smile widened, but she waved off the praise. "We're all the real deal here," she replied, her humility as striking as her skill. She led them on a tour explaining her vision: youth clinics to teach kids the game, women's tournaments to break barriers, and open nights where amateurs could test their mettle. The staff listened intently, their enthusiasm growing. Maria, the bartender, suggested a signature mocktail called the Nine Ball, sparking laughter. Olivia nodded, impressed, already picturing the drink on the menu. As they moved through the hall, workers installed a state-of-the-art sound system, testing it with a low bass line that pulsed like a heartbeat. The jukebox was gone, replaced by a curated playlist of jazz and hip-hop, a nod to Atlanta's soul. Outside, a crowd gathered, drawn by rumors of the hall's rebirth. Passers-by peered through the windows, their curiosity fueled by tales of Olivia's triumph over Mitch. A local reporter, notepad in hand, lingered by the door, eager for a quote. Olivia, ever focused, delegated Keisha to handle the press. Her priority was the hall, her team, her dream. She paused by a new trophy case, its glass shelves waiting for future victories. She'd already envisioned a Banks Break Championship, a national event to draw the best players, cementing the hall's legacy. As the day waned, the workers finished, leaving the hall transformed, a modern, vibrant space that radiated possibility. Olivia stood alone, her boots scuffing the gleaming floor, her eyes tracing the murals, the tables, the bar. This was more than a business. It was a statement. She'd taken a place that rejected her and made it her own, not with vengeance, but with vision. The city was watching, and soon the world would too. Lucky Break was no longer a relic. It was a revolution, and Olivia Banks was its architect, ready to redefine the game for a new generation. The Doha sun blazed over the Al Gharafa Sports Club, its heat a relentless pulse against the glass walls of the arena hosting the World Nine-Ball Championship. Inside, the air was cool, electric, charged with the clatter of cue balls and the murmurs of a global audience. Olivia Banks stood at the edge of the main table, her white athletic ensemble, tailored, sleek, and emblazoned with the Banks Break logo, a stark contrast to the vibrant chaos of the international flags overhead. Her coiled hair was tucked neatly under a cap, her dark eyes sharp with focus. At 32, she was no longer just the owner of a burgeoning billiards empire. She was a U.S. national team member, a prodigy whose meteoric rise had earned her a spot among the world's elite. Tonight she faced the final match, a shot at the gold trophy, and a chance to etch her name into the annals of the sport. The arena buzzed, thousands of spectators, Qatari locals, European enthusiasts, Asian journalists, leaning forward in their seats. Television cameras swiveled, their lenses trained on Olivia as she chalked her cue, the blue dust settling like a ritual. Her journey to this moment had been relentless. Months of grueling qualifiers, late-night practice sessions, and the weight of a nation's expectations. She dominated earlier rounds, dispatching a German veteran and a Japanese rising star with surgical precision. Now she faced Li Wei, a Chinese champion whose icy demeanor and flawless technique had made her a favorite. The scoreboard glowed. Li Wei led by one game in the race to 9. The next rack could decide it all. Olivia's heart pounded, but her face was a mask of calm, honed by years of facing hostility in smoky pool halls. She glanced at the crowd, spotting her coach, Jamal, a former pro from her Lucky Break staff, his nod a silent anchor. Beside him, Keisha, her assistant, clutched a tablet, her eyes fierce with pride. The announcer's voice boomed, introducing the rack, and the crowd hushed, the tension thick enough to choke. Li Wei, her black uniform stark against her pale skin, racked the balls with mechanical precision, her expression unreadable. Olivia won the lag, earning the break, and stepped to the table, her cue an extension of her will. She struck the cue ball with a thunderous crack, the ball scattering like stars in a supernova. The one ball dropped into a corner pocket, a perfect start. The crowd murmured, impressed as she circled the table, her movements fluid, predatory. The 2 ball was a clean shot, and she sank it with a crisp thunk, her focus narrowing to the felt's green expanse. Li Wei watched, her arms crossed, her eyes like lasers. The 3 and 4 followed, Olivia's shots a masterclass in control. Each clack, a heartbeat in the arena's pulse. The crowd's energy surged, American flags waving alongside Qatari ones. A rare unity on the sport's global stage. The 5-ball posed a challenge, nestled behind the 9, requiring a delicate touch. Olivia leaned low, her white attire catching the spotlights, her mind calculating spin and angle. She struck the cue ball, grazing the 9 to nudge the 5 into a side pocket. A few spectators clapped, but Li Wei's expression didn't flicker. The 6 and 7 fell swiftly, Olivia's rhythm unbroken, her body a symphony of precision. The 8-ball loomed, a tricky angle with the cue ball near the rail. The crowd leaned forward, sensing the stakes. A miss could hand Li Wei the game, maybe the match. Olivia chalked her cue, her movements deliberate, ignoring the camera flashes. She visualized the shot. A bank off the rail, a whisper of backspin. Li Wei shifted, her first sign of unease, and Olivia seized the moment. She struck, the cue ball ricocheting with a click, tapping the 8 into a corner pocket. The crowd roared, a wave of sound that shook the arena. Jamal pumped his fist, Keisha grinning wildly. Only the 9-ball remained, a yellow-striped beacon near the center, an open shot but with a catch. The cue ball's position risked a scratch if mishandled. Li Wei stepped closer, her presence a silent taunt, her reputation as a closer legendary. The scoreboard loomed, the match tied at 8 games each. Olivia's pulse thundered, but her hands were steady, her mind a fortress. She leaned over, her eyes locked on the 9, the world fading. Cameras, crowd, Li Wei, all gone. This was her table, her game, her moment. She struck, the cue ball gliding with a sharp clack, striking the 9 dead center. The yellow ball rocketed toward the corner pocket, the crowd surging to its feet as it slammed home with a decisive thunk. The cue ball stopped, inches from the rail, a perfect finish. The arena erupted, a tidal wave of cheers, flags waving, cameras flashing. Olivia straightened, her cap shadowing her eyes, a faint smile breaking her calm. Jamal rushed forward, hugging her, while Keisha shouted, "You did it!" The announcer's voice boomed, declaring Olivia Banks the world 9-ball champion. Li Wei extended a hand, her nod grudging but respectful, a rare crack in her icy facade. Olivia shook it, her grip firm, her dignity unshaken by the match's intensity. The trophy ceremony was a blur, gold gleaming under spotlights, the crowd chanting her name. She lifted the cup, its weight a testament to her journey from a scorned outsider to a global icon. Journalists swarmed, microphones thrusting forward. But Olivia's words were measured, her humility as striking as her skill. "This is for everyone who's been told they don't belong," she said, her voice resonant, broadcast to millions. The crowd roared again, her message echoing beyond the arena, a beacon for those fighting their own battles. As she stepped off the stage, the trophy in her hands, Olivia's white attire glowed, a symbol of her defiance, her triumph. The world had watched, and she'd shown them what a black woman from Atlanta could do. The stage was hers, and she'd claimed it with every shot, every choice, every ounce of her unbreakable will. The Atlanta skyline glittered against the twilight, its lights a constellation of ambition and resilience, as Olivia Banks stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows of her office atop the Banks Break headquarters. Her white blazer, sharp and tailored, was a nod to the dress she'd worn that fateful day at Lucky Break Billiards, now a symbol of her unyielding spirit. The city below pulsed with life, but her gaze was inward, reflecting on the empire she'd built from a single, defiant stand. Lucky Break was no longer a rundown pool hall. It was a cultural beacon, its success rippling across the nation and beyond. Olivia, at 32, was more than a billiards champion or entrepreneur. She was a movement, her legacy etched in the lives she'd touched and the barriers she'd shattered. Her desk, a sleek slab of mahogany, was strewn with invitations, speaking engagements at universities, endorsements from sports brands, requests to coach national teams. A framed photo of her hoisting the World Nine-Ball Championship trophy in Doha sat beside a stack of letters from young players, their handwritten words of gratitude, a testament to her impact. One, from a teenage girl in Chicago, read, "You showed me I can be anything." Olivia's fingers brushed the letter, her heart swelling with a quiet pride, not for her victories, but for the spark she'd ignited in others. Her journey from a black woman scorned in a smoky hall to a global icon had become a rallying cry for those told they didn't belong. Downstairs, Lucky Break thrummed with energy. The hall, reborn under Olivia's vision, was a vibrant hub, its oak tables packed with players, its mahogany bar serving craft cocktails to a diverse crowd. Murals of soaring cue balls adorned the walls, and jazz flowed from the sound system, weaving Atlanta's soul into the atmosphere. Tonight it hosted a women's tournament, the first of its kind in the city, with dozens of competitors, young and old, black, white, Latina, vying for a trophy bearing Olivia's name. She'd insisted on free entry, funding it herself to ensure no one was excluded. The laughter and clatter of balls drifted up, a symphony of inclusion that made her smile. Olivia descended to the hall, her presence drawing every eye. Players paused mid-shot, spectators whispering her name. She moved with grace, her boots soft on the polished hardwood, greeting staff with warm nods. Jamal, her coach and former pro, was refereeing, his grin wide as he called a shot. Maria, the bartender, waved from behind the counter, her nine-ball mocktail a crowd favorite. Keisha, her assistant, darted through the throng, coordinating with a local news crew filming the event. The reporter, a young woman with a notepad, caught Olivia's eye, her expression awestruck. "Ms. Banks, you're an inspiration," she said, microphone trembling. Olivia's smile was humble, deflecting the praise. "This is about them," she said, gesturing to the players. "They're the future." She took a seat in the glass-walled lounge, watching a match between a college student and a seasoned player, their focus mirroring her own. The student, a black girl with braids, sank a tricky shot, earning cheers. Olivia clapped, her heart swelling. She'd been that girl once, defying a world that underestimated her. Her youth clinics, now running weekly, had drawn hundreds of kids, many from underserved neighborhoods. She taught them not just billiards, but resilience, echoing her uncle's words. "The table doesn't care who you are." Those lessons were her true legacy, a foundation stronger than any trophy. Her phone buzzed, a message from a sports federation inviting her to guest coach at the next Pan American Games. She'd already inspired a surge in women joining the U.S. billiard circuit, her Doha triumph broadcast to millions. Social media buzzed with hashtags, "Nitty break like Banks," "Sure dignity on the table," spreading her story to corners she'd never imagined. A viral video of her sinking the nine-ball against Li Wei had amassed millions of views, comments flooding in from girls in Nigeria, Brazil, and Japan. "You made me believe in myself," one wrote. Olivia read each, her humility unwavering, but the weight of her influence was undeniable. Across town, Mitch Carver's name had faded, a cautionary tale among hustlers. Whispers said he'd left Atlanta, his arrogance a shadow no one mourned. Olivia harbored no bitterness. Her victory was never about him, but about proving what was possible. She'd turned Lucky Break into a rebuke of his prejudice, a place where anyone could play without fear. Her chain had expanded, new halls in Miami, Chicago, Las Vegas, each a testament to her vision. Industry leaders now sought her counsel, her model of inclusive, high-quality venues reshaping the sports landscape. As the tournament's final match began, Olivia joined the crowd, her presence electrifying. The players, a Latina teen and a black mother of two, battled fiercely, their shots echoing Olivia's precision. The teen won, her scream of joy infectious, and Olivia presented the trophy, her words resonant. "This is what we play for: heart, skill, and respect." The crowd roared, cameras flashing, the moment broadcast live to thousands online. Keisha leaned in, whispering, "You've changed the game, Liv." Olivia's eyes shone, but she shook her head. "We all did," she said, gesturing to the players, the staff, the crowd. Back in her office as night cloaked the city, Olivia stood by the window, a single light illuminating her desk. A new letter lay open, From a girl who joined a clinic after escaping an abusive home. Your story saved me, it read. Olivia's throat tightened, the words heavier than any gold. She wasn't just a champion or CEO. She was a symbol of what it meant to stand tall, to turn pain into power. Her legacy wasn't in the halls she built or the trophies she won, but in the countless lives she'd lifted, the dreams she'd sparked in those who saw her and dared to believe. The city sparkled below, a canvas of possibility. Olivia Banks, once an outsider in a hostile hall, had redefined the game. Not just billiards, but the game of life. Her white attire, her unbreakable will, her quiet dignity, they were her armor, her crown, her gift to the world. And as the stars emerged, she knew this was only the beginning. Her legacy, a flame that would burn bright for generations. What an incredible journey with Olivia Banks, from a defiant stand in Lucky Break Billiards to a global icon of resilience and dignity. We hope her story inspired you as much as it did us. What did you think? Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between your pride and a challenge? Share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your stories. A huge thank you for joining us today. If you enjoyed this tale, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell for our latest videos, and share this with friends. Let's keep the conversation going. Until next time, stay bold, stay true, and we'll see you in the next story. Keep breaking barriers.